the Hungarian voters have done the hard thing, and they've removed Orban despite, the complete system bias towards him.
Yeah.
And Magyar's done a fantastic job, ran a very smart campaign. Surely the EU can give him a bit of leeway, because 30 billion investment could go a long way.
Yep. But, they've got rid of Orban. Is there a new threat in Bulgaria? I don't know if you want to say anything else about Hungary, but it might be a great bridge to now.
No, we should. We absolutely should. So, as everyone knows, the major EU decisions, so for example, giving £90 billion to Ukraine as a loan, is they need to get full unanimous support from all 27 EU member states. And historically, Hungary has been the one opposing voice blocking the EU's decisions. Now, you might be thinking, if you're, Ursula von der Leyen, you've seen the Hungary election, you've seen Peter Magyar willing to cooperate with the EU, wanting desperately to get EU money into his country, great. The long-standing veto from Hungary's gone. But, 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we had the Bulgarian election. And, yes, it might have thrown another spanner in the works. I don't know if you want to take people through the basics.
So because there is background here. The background is that Bulgaria, pretty much in recent years, has swung between centre-right, centre-left governments like most of Europe. Come 2021, huge corruption scandal involving government and also another of the parties, not traditional opposition. And we kind of get a mess, in terms of new parties coming about, anti-corruption parties not wanting to go with either side, no government forms. So obviously, new elections. This kind of thing happens. Sometimes governments
you need to give some more context to this. So, they had the election in May of 2021.
Yeah.
Do you know when the next election took place after that?
I think it was July.
It was indeed. So they had a government. Well, they didn't have a government. They elected someone.
And then
nothing worked. 2 months later, another election.
And then in July, they didn't do it again.
Yes.
And there was another election, 2021.
In October.
October.
So in 1 year, they had 3 elections. But wait, it gets better, because after 2021, they did make it. They made it through to the rest of that year. I think it was 2020. It was 2022.
A brief government where actually the opposition parties to the centre-right government did come together, but then one of the populists kind of broke apart. So in 2022, we had a new election.
Yes.
And then in 2023, a new election. And then in 2024, we have 2 elections. There was another brief government period there where there was a kind of government of national unity, I think, from the two sides.
Yeah, so I want to clarify this, because this is an absolutely crazy system they had in place. So we had 3 elections in 2021.
Yeah.
We had an election in 2022. And then in 2023, the voters again tired. The parties are like, okay, we'll come up with a radical solution. And they decided to have a rotational government. So it wasn't a government of national unity. It wasn't like Labour and the Conservatives allying together in World War II. It was like, we're going to have the centre-right Prime Minister for 9 months, and then in 9 months' time, you're going to make it the centre-left Prime Minister. And they're going to keep doing this every 9 months. Now, obviously, this ran into problems pretty quickly, because the other side, upon the switch, accused the other one of stitching them up. Like you said, with Orban, trying to stitch up Magyar when he comes in. This was going on, and this is what was going to happen every 9 months as each party tries to stay afloat. So, lo and behold, in 2023, that government of national unity, or the rotational government as we call it, also collapsed.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 elections there. So we had 5 elections.
So already on 5
elections in 2 years. But Luca, it gets better, doesn't it?
Yeah. Then we have an election in June, in which deadlock once again, until there's election in October in 2024. And then there is really a need for Bulgaria to try and get a government sorted fairly soon enough, because it's going to adopt the euro in just over a year. And so we do eventually, it's not the 2 kind of main players at this point, which is a kind of centrist Liberal Party and the old centre-right party that come together. But we do see the old centre-left Socialist Party being decimated at this point. Say, okay, we'll put our differences aside. We'll go with the main centre-right party. They ally with kind of one of the Turkish minority parties that also gets lots of votes from the Roma community. I think that then switched and they allied with the other one somewhere through as well. They're also hugely corrupt. I'm absolutely confident just saying that. It's not a controversial thing. Go look it up. video clips of them paying kind of illiterate Roma population voters to just go and vote.
Yeah, okay. I believe you.
So that sticks together until protests happen pretty much a month before the euro has to get introduced because of huge corruption and funding issues, which we're not going to get into details now, but it is interesting. Go and look up the Bulgarian protests. So they pretty much adopt the euro without a functioning government. And the key thing that also then happens in that time period after the government collapsed is that the president realizes his term is coming to an end. And the president had been elected with a pretty clear majority and wasn't affiliated to any of the parties.
Yeah, it's worth saying that the president in Bulgaria is much more of a ceremonial position.
Yeah.
Has very little actual
And
powers.
so, as is often the case when it's ceremonial, has a broad kind of consensus and popularity. So, he's kind of stayed away from the fray, except for doing the odd criticism on Ukraine every now and then. But he had a large consensus. He was backed by pretty much the entire opposition to the centre-right party that had been accused of corruption. And so he decides, well, this is a mess. I'm going to have to get involved. And creates his new Progressive Bulgaria party, which is a very hard party to describe. He had the backing
I would say
of the socialists.
They're probably not a progressive party.
No, I wouldn't say so.
The name is...
You could maybe say they're on the left, but I wouldn't say they're progressive. You know, they ally... It's the kind of Eastern Europe, you know, nostalgic Soviet communist kind of leftist vibe. But I don't think it's got anything to do with progressive values, really. Not that they're explicitly conservative either. But really, it's all a cult of personality around Radev himself and the anti-corruption thing. So every single party that has tried to challenge GERB, the centre-right party, has modeled themselves as anti-corruption. But this time, with a bit more of a pro-Russia tint. Now, we've said that Orban has got... And by the way, the results of this election were that he got a huge majority, and he's going to have absolute control. We don't really know, like with Magyar, other characters within his party. Magyar had a few at the top that had a bit of a past. Radev's pretty unknown, and we don't really know what he's going to stand for. We do know he has been critical of Ukraine. Now, I would be very surprised if he goes full Orban style, maximum anti-Ukraine, make it properly...
No, it seems very unlikely that he would do that.
Yeah, but he will be less supportive of Ukraine than other Bulgarian governments have been in the past. So I think we can compare it a bit to a Slovakia, Czech Republic division of kind of Ukraine critic, but not anti-Ukraine. But I think that he is not going to put that much energy into it, more than anything, because Bulgaria has not had a government for 5 years. Yeah. He needs to do stability. He needs to try and at least make it look like he's going to do anti-corruption reforms. Whether he's going to do that or not remains to be seen. I find it very unlikely when someone wins a campaign on anti-corruption that they ever actually do anything about it. It just seems to be a word that they throw around.
Well, I hope not in Hungary's case. Bloody hell. That's the whole thing.
But his whole thing wasn't just on anti-corruption. That's the difference. So when parties just say they're anti-corruption, it always seems sus to me.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to have to concentrate on that, especially now there's good chances for growth with the euro coming in. People are going to want to invest in Bulgaria because it hasn't been investable for the last 5 years. So to waste your energy on Ukraine would be incredibly foolish of me.
No,
especially when you've
and
got
I think that does seem unlikely. He seems like a sensible pragmatist, if anything.
He's definitely a pragmatist.
Just for some context of who this guy is. So it's Rumen Radev. He's a former Air Force commander, apparently. So
very electable.
Very electable. Bit of a strong man. I mean, I think Bulgaria, from looking at their leaders, tends to quite like these strong man sort of former Soviet commanders.
Tall, bold men, I think, seems to...
Yeah. Like
they elected a former king once.
Really?
Do you know this? In the early 2000s, they elected the last king of Bulgaria, who was overthrown in like the 1940s when he was like 2. And they elected him as a liberal leader in the 2000s. And his name is Saxe-Coburg-Gotski. So like Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, like the British royal family had.
Okay.
But, you know, kind of Slavicized, if that's the right term. So ending with Gotski.
But yeah, no, I'll put him up on screen, but go Google Rumen Radev because he looks like a classic strongman.
Yeah.
But it's also worth saying, so the guy he replaced is Borisov.
Yeah. Well, not as prime minister, but as, you know, the last real potent leader.
Yes, sorry.
Bulgaria.
So Borisov was. I don't want to. He's not an all man, but that's.
No, certainly
He was the most
European,
preeminent figure in the
was-
last
yeah.
16, 20 years in
and he was
Bulgarian
he
politics.
was an oligarch. There's no one will deny that this man was an oligarch. So whilst he wasn't illiberal trying to overturn democracy, he was an incredibly corrupt rich man who had business interests.
Yeah. So there was one part of the reason that brought down Borisov's latest government was that they leaked a photo, and in his bedside drawer there was a gun, €500 notes, and gold bullions, and people were just like, "Yeah, well, that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?" But yes, I mean, Bulgaria, it's not like Hungary. It's not as nearly as undemocratic, but there's definitely a little bit of corruption going on, and oligarchs definitely rule. You might remember that about 4 years ago, they arrested a very preeminent Bulgarian businessman. His name escapes me because it's very difficult to read and pronounce. But it's very much an oligarchy there in the style of Russia.
Yeah, there's one of the other party leaders who leads one of these Turkish minority, also appeals to the Roman party. So there's two of them because they had a fight and they broke away. One of them, they're both incredibly rich. You know, it's totally personalized parties with no ideologies about them. One of them had an assassination attempt on stage where the guy pointed a gun at his face, clicked it, and the gun just didn't fire.
Damn.
And the other one is who's perhaps the even more crazy one, kind of willing to just do whatever, ally with Trump or whatever he says no more Euro-Atlantist, after having been one for years. He is so hated and wanted that I think the story is he refuses to eat anything other than McDonald's because he's scared of being poisoned. So,
yes.
So this is the level of corruption.
It's a complete
in
mess,
Bulgarian
Bulgaria.
politics. Then, of course, there are these incredibly far-right pro-Russia parties that make, restore Britain look like absolute moderates.
So I think this is where Radev has come in. It's that it is anti-corruption, but also, more than anything, it's this idea of stability.
Yeah.
Like, Bulgaria has been the worst run political country, democratic system in Europe in the last 10 years. There is no competition.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, okay, Hungary has been
I'm
more
trying to think.
more evilly run, I would say, less democratically, but at least there's been stability.
Yeah,
Bulgaria
Romania is the
has
closest,
had
but it's
8
not been as
elections
bad as
in 5
Bulgaria.
years.
Yeah.
They've tried everything under the sun. They had, reformist parties ally with the old parties just to try and have any sort of government. But we went through it. 3 elections in 2021, 2 elections in 2022, another one in 2023. That collapses. 2024, 2025, every year they had an election and the government's never lasted more than 9 months. So that's where Radev has come in.
Yeah,
He's come in as the long-serving president. He's been like, you know what? I'm the guy. You know who I am. You know what I'm about. Vote me and I'll sort this mess out.
And I think not only could no one have come in like him because of the personality he has, no one could have come in like Radev for this election to capture the consensus vote, even on an ideological position. Because he won the presidential election on the leftist ticket, opposing the right. And so the socialists could back him. The kind of Turkish party had kind of backed him in the second round to go against the second right. But also the liberal, very pro-EU people who are very pro-Ukraine, they had backed him before and maybe were willing to back him again. But similarly, by being very anti-Ukraine, he had the backing of people on the far right that maybe didn't want to vote for people, the far right parties, as extreme and saw Borisov as someone they could now back. And so essentially everyone that wasn't so I say Borisov, I meant to say Radev. They had the backing of everyone that wasn't a Borisov fan, or at least the potential backing. And so all of a sudden, it became very easy for him to get a majority because people were like, well, it may not be my first choice, but at least we'll have a stable government, and, my party is going to be pretty much be dead anyway. So, well, let's take this punt.
Yeah. And I think, just to wrap up on this section, so we have mentioned how Bulgaria might now be the thorn or the Achilles heel for the EU. But I'm going to say this, I do think it's unlikely. Just because, now, there might be some smaller vetoes that he uses or arguments. But Bulgaria is a poor country in European standards. It's probably the second poorest, I would think. Wager maybe after, well, I was going to say Albania, but Albania is not EU. Bulgaria is a poor country. It needs the money. Like Hungary, it's got EU funds coming in. Now, if it starts to mess around, best believe the EU is not going to mess around again, and it's going to like do what it did to Hungary and prevent and freeze funds. Yeah. It also just needs some sense of stability, like you said, to get investment. Yeah. So I think it is likely that he's going to play ball.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen, even in the ways he's want to appeal to the anti-Europe aspect, it's not been strong, you know. He'd called for kind of a referendum on the euro in the past, during the campaign, didn't really back it up. He did say, like, saying Crimea is Russia is not a controversial statement, but he could have said much worse. You know, that was maybe something that not even Orban has said on that. But of course, there is a kind of historical, very, even not pro-Ukraine, but anti-Russia aspect in Hungary that perhaps isn't as prominent in Bulgaria. So you kind of can say that. But he hasn't been willing to go further.
What I've seen is the furthest thing that although that actually would take the biscuit, is that he said if Ukraine should sue for peace for Russia and essentially give up its territorial possessions. But I mean, that's not that different to what Trump says, to be honest.
No, exactly. And
it's sort of that East European sort of pragmatism. Russian
so he's saying these kind of things. Oh, you'll be pragmatic to do this, or this is the situation. But he's never been really explicitly like anti-Ukraine or pro-Russia. He's kind of showing his pro-Russian side through realism.
Yeah.
Right? Through IR realism, geopolitical realism.
At the end of the day, Bulgaria does not have the financial flexibility of Hungary to really start sticking it to anyone.
Not was huge, but Hungary was more.
Yeah, not that Hungary was huge, but Hungary does have
important centres, universities, which obviously then kicked out with the CEU. And just its kind of central location. Bulgaria wants to make a mess. The EU can really be just like...
But it's definitely something to watch. So hopefully that's a new name for you. Rumen Radev, Hungary's newest prime minister. I guess I kind of hope for Bulgaria's... Sorry, I said Hungary's newest prime minister. Bulgaria's new prime minister. And I hope that for Bulgaria's sake, not because I'm politically aligned with him, but just in the sense that I think for democracy and for stability... I hope and wish him a good term.
Yeah, it's important that he completes his term. Whatever you think about him, it's important for Bulgaria to finally have a sense of stability, break out of this electoral continuous cycle, have a stable economic environment that's investable because their firms have not been seeing enough investment despite the growth. It needs to go well. So after 2 elections last week in Europe, national elections that were very uncertain. We still don't know the outcome of. We had 2 people winning some pretty comfortable majorities, but with a task